All right. I'm here with Jen Aniano. I'm going to butcher your last name. Would you
No, it's
pronounce it?
perfect.
Oh, it is Jen Aniano. Okay. So for those of you that don't know her, I know her because back in the day, mixed martial arts, she was in the cage throwing down. Now she's on the political front, fighting for people, fighting for the rights of human beings and stuff. For the people that don't know you, just tell us a little bit about yourself and, how you interact with the Michigan political scene.
Sure. So I'm a public educator in Kalamazoo County, and through my work with the union, with the Michigan Education Association, I became really interested in politics, and I ran for state house in 2018. And by doing that, I made like really good connections with people, and I was encouraged by some people that work for the Michigan Democratic Party to try to get this county commission seat. So I'm also a county commissioner in Kalamazoo County, and primarily what county commissioners do is deal with the budget for the county, so how to fund departments, and that includes the sheriff's department, so public safety for the county, and things like that. So that's our biggest job, but within that comes stuff that has to do with like women's health and mental health and community health, which are huge topics, and how to bridge the gap between the rich and poor in the county, and how to prevent homelessness. So any service that you get in the county, basically the county commission sort of oversees. And that also includes like courts and prosecutors and things like that. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now as far as being in the political scene.
Gotcha. So now you're speaking to someone that's not very political at all. I try to stay out of it. I'm a martial artist. I'm a jiu-jitsu coach. I study world events as much as I can, but really I try to focus on the local community and doing what I can to try to steer that community in a good direction. Tell me a little bit about why the Democratic Party, what made you take the choices that what made you decide that like, hey, if I'm going to get into the political field, this is why I'm choosing the Democratic side. Pretend you're speaking to someone, which you are, who is not affiliated with either party. Explain to me like what led to that choice, and then we can get further into this.
So I've always been a person who advocated, even when I had no idea what politics was, advocated for public education, advocated for unions and laborers. I grew up in a house of carpenters, so unions have always been something that is really important to me. And as I got experience and became an adult and worked, I think I have a decade now under my belt as a public teacher in Michigan, I realized how important democratic values are to public education and to unionization and labor. So that's where my passion comes for being a Democratic Party member. I honestly don't like the two-party system. I think the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are machines. I don't necessarily think collectively they work for people who are supporting them. But I think if we talk about ideals and vision, I lean more towards moderate liberal than I do towards conservatism.
So speaking on those values, because a lot of what you just said sounds great, and it sounds like I might go that route as well. What would you say are those core principles that separate a Democrat from a Republican? Like what is that distinction? Because what you just said, I mean, those are very generalization things that I think everybody should agree with. We need to take care of our educators. We need to build a better future. Unions can be important. You're saying that Republicans don't support those things, but Democrats
Correct.
do?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Well, then, yeah, that's massive. I mean, obviously, it was a pretty simple choice for you then. You said, hey, you don't back these things, these people do. Gotcha. So that let's move the clock forward a little bit. COVID-19 hits the world. It's coming out of Wuhan, China. I mean, wherever we were, the world got turned upside down and we had to adapt, right? So when you initially heard about this going on, what were your first reactions? What were your first opinions? And now maybe let's just say with an expedited version, where are you currently at on the topic today?
Sure. So it was months before we went into lockdown. I don't remember exactly when, probably like December. One of my students was like, Miss, do you see what's going on in China with this COVID? And I'm like, yeah, man, it's crazy, right? And he's like, yeah, we're going to lock down, aren't we? And I was like, no, bro, that's never going to happen here, like
Wow.
ever. And then like a month or two later, it was like, whoops. So it took me by surprise for sure. I think that as Americans, we sort of feel a little untouchable sometimes when it comes to stuff like this because we do have a healthcare system that has high quality doctors and specialists. And if you are fortunate enough to be in a place where you can have insurance or you can afford to go to the doctor,
Sure.
it's not a bad system, right? It's bad for the people that can't afford things or can't afford specialists. So, you know, that's where that crux lies. So I think my, I guess I'll call it American privilege, made me like, no, that's not going to happen here. We're going to be fine. They'll just, you know, stop traveling from China and it won't spread and we'll be good. And ironically, I think I had COVID. I was insanely sick from like the end of December until almost March. And I went to the doctor like 8 times and I couldn't breathe and I had to get steroids and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Like, I totally did not think this is where we'd be right now. Definitely did not. But I do feel that what has occurred is necessary, um, which is hard, right? Because small business owners, like people in the middle class who are just trying to make it, they're the ones who are hurting right now. Like, that's, you know, people like you. I'll be hurting come the fall when there's no tax revenue for public education, right? I'm probably going to see a lot of cuts to my job, which I don't like. Um, but I don't know that not doing anything would have been okay either.
Gotcha. So now, with the current knowledge you have, because that was like your initial, you saw how this was coming out. Do you still feel the same way? Do you feel the same way from the initial reports? What have you learned, and what has changed? From, I think, what was it, March 13th or 14th, we initiated lockdowns
Yeah.
versus now.
Mm-hmm. So, I think there were some things that were a little bit ridiculous, like the blocking of aisles and stuff in stores and whatever. Like, all right. But like, do I think things needed to close down? Yeah. Do I think we all needed to like stay home and not spread this thing? Yeah. And I'm gonna ask that the people who watch this don't quote me on this, but when I was dealing with being really sick, like after so I was sick for like 4 or 5 weeks and then I felt a little bit better and then I got really sick and I had a fever and it was like bad and my body was on fire. Like I never felt anything like that in my life. And right after that symptom started to occur, I had like 19 kids absent in my first period and 16 kids absent in my second period. Don't quote me on the numbers, but it was a lot. Like it was, you know, half or more of the kids. And I'm like, thinking back on that now, I'm like, yeah, we probably all spread like this thing to each other, right? So just taking that microcosm of my life and like me and 35 kids per hour in the same place and 19 and 16 don't come to school, that's scary to me, like if you look at it from that lens. And I don't think that life is going to return to normal anytime soon, if at all. I think we're going to see a wave where companies just have more people working from home. We might see a shift in what public education looks like, what a school year looks like, what it means to go to school, what grades go to school at what time. So I think we have not seen the outcome of what this is going to be. I think we're like in the thick of living through it right now and we're all going a little crazy and like nobody wants to be at home anymore. I don't. Yeah, nobody wants to be on their computer all day. Like this is crazy. So I think like we're all feeling it right now. And when things start to come to like retrospect and what we need to do differently, I certainly hope we do things differently. Um, but I don't think we've seen as crazy as it's going to be with like reshaping our system.
So do you believe these things are going to be necessary? You believe that the world should have to reshape its education systems, the way that small businesses operate, the distance that people keep between each other. You're saying that due to the threat of the virus, we need to restructure the world, and you support that movement? I want to understand that part, right?
I think that like I said, I don't support every single thing that Governor Whitmer has done 100%. I think that when she looks back on this, she's going to find some things that she can say. I hope she finds things that she can say, hey, maybe that wasn't right and I made a decision as best I could, and here's the things I learned from it. I hope sincerely that that is what occurs, in the summer or whatever, when this dies down a little bit. I think until we have a vaccine or until we have some knowledge of medications that can lessen the symptoms for people who are most vulnerable to this virus, it's like our humanity, like it's our human part and role to suck it up and like think about how we can change what we're doing a little bit just to help those people. And I say that as someone who, like, my grandmother right now is in the hospital on a ventilator from COVID. She was in a nursing home in New York City. So I say that as someone who's like, oh dang, this like has hit me pretty close to home. So do I support completely reshaping everything? No. Do I think we need to do our part until we have some more medical knowledge and possibly a vaccine or some medications that can lessen symptoms, especially for our most vulnerable people? I just, from a human standpoint, feel like it, as someone who is healthy, it is my job to do what I can to keep those people safe.
So I'm going to break down your response a little bit because I understand what you're saying. So let's go initially. I mean, I erred on the side of caution as well. Obviously, we didn't really know anything what was going on out of this Wuhan event. I completely locked down my academy. I shut down all my doors. I quarantined myself. I avoided my girlfriend for 6 weeks because she has an autoimmune disorder. So I said, I am not going to take any risk at all. But if my life's work is going to be a hold, like I'm gonna closely investigate this event. So initially, you remember what sparked this all was the London Imperial model, right? Out of the UK, there was a gentleman named Neil Ferguson. That was the doctor that said, based on what's going on, he made predictions. So the original number, the up to 2.2 million Americans that would die if we didn't take any action. And in the UK, it would be 500,000. He was the source. He was the step one. All media, all governments cited the London Imperial model, right? So obviously that type of prediction, that's terrifying. That says millions of our Americans, like people like you and I, your grandmother, my girlfriend, right, are possibly going to die from this. So within 2 weeks, that prediction changed from 2.2 million down to 250,000. Now that's a massive change. And I said, okay, well, hey, maybe we learned something. I'm going to look into why that happened. So the contagion factor in his model was way off. Turns out the virus was so much more widespread than he had thought that they had to adjust the model. So, I mean, that's massively different, which that sounds terrifying, but it actually means the virus is much less deadly than we thought. So that was at least a step in the right direction. And since then, it's changed again, which you should look that up. So we go initially on the side of caution, and I'm all for that. But then I instantly said, well, I also think we should look into this gentleman, like, obviously, if he's driving the main source that the media is referencing, the political parties are using, we need to see his history. So this gentleman made predictions with swine flu, bird flu, mad cow, foot and mouth disease, and many other diseases. I'm going to give you a real quick example with bird flu. He predicted up to 200 million people would die. Less than 10,000 did. That's one. His other predictions were outlandish as well. Now, and here's where we're rolling into with this. I'm not even saying don't err on the side of caution, because that is just, human decency. Let's play it safe. Let's initially lock down. But knowing that the source of this entire prediction imagine if I had told you up to 200 million people were going to die and less than 10,000, you'd probably shoot me for such bad information. But you know what? On the side of caution, I'm fine with that. It turns out he was insanely wrong on the 4 that I just listed, not even close. So wouldn't you think, let's listen to this expert, but let's take what he says with a very healthy dose of skepticism. And as soon as data starts to become available, let's make sure we're evaluating our decisions, because as you know, there's over 45 million people currently unemployed. That's 3 times the number of the Great Depression. And yes, we're giving out benefits, but what if those benefits run out? What about when deferred payments are all due? We're causing a lot. So the second part of your first of all, how do you feel about that before I go to the vaccines and the medication? So this gentleman's been insanely inaccurate before, but yet we use him as the main source to drive the story from the beginning, which I understand caution, but I don't understand not using data. Go.
I think so. If what you're saying is correct, that is insane. I'm not sure I trust really 100% of anybody that comes out as an expert for anything, quite frankly, because of
I can
what
appreciate
you're
that.
saying, right? But I think that since lockdown, I feel as though Dr. Khaldun, who is the person responsible for Michigan's COVID response, essentially medically, and the CDC, Dr. Fauci, I believe that they are looking at the data that are coming out based on infections and death. But here is again the issue with that. We did not test enough people soon enough, and we still aren't testing enough people. So that data are not even correct. So if you're asking if I trust data 100% right now, the answer is no, I don't. But also do think there is a virus. I do think it is highly contagious, and I do think that vulnerable people are very susceptible to it and can die from it. So
I 100% agree with all three of the last
that's
statements.
where I stand on that. Am I like histrionic? No, I'm not. Which is why I say I think that life is going to look very different until we have a vaccine or medications that can suppress symptoms.
So let's go to that part of the question. So generally throughout human history, what's kept our species alive is our immune system response. And in certain cases, you don't want to risk that. Like if you or I had the choice whether we want to just contract polio and see if we win the battle, or if we would rather get a vaccine for polio, we would both probably say, hey, let's take the vaccination. I don't want to roll the dice no matter how healthy I am. But if something was well below like half of a percent of case mortality rate across everybody, that would mean that for healthy young adults and children, you have a 99.9, and decimals chance of beating it. You probably wouldn't wait for a vaccine, or you most certainly would not restructure society. So let's look at it this way. With contracting COVID, unless you have a heavily compromised immune system, our B cells, T cells produce antigens. We will beat a virus and we will produce immunity. And now, can viruses change? Yes, but that's the same with influenza. So the influenza, for example, even with a vaccine, even with decades of research, even with Medicaid, with everything that we know, in 2017 killed over 60,000 people.
Flu is no joke. Yeah.
So wouldn't you have to put COVID into its proper perspective to then decide if you want to say, well, we need to completely lock down, or like we need to follow all these protocols until a vaccine is available? You would need to weigh what is the risk to young, healthy adults and children of getting COVID, what's going to take place, or what is the risk of letting violent and sexual offenders out of prison across the nation, of unemployment for 45 million people. Yeah, unemployment for 45 million people, about small businesses being destroyed to a level they will never return, about we could go on about the insanity list, just like when you said, hey, I don't agree with that. We could make one of those cartoon Christmas lists that rolls out forever about hypocrisy, right? So if we can put this in a proper perspective, and we do know that we have immune systems that we produce immunity. So I got an argument with an ICU nurse, and I don't want to say argument, it's dialogue, but she kept saying to me, well, James, this is novel and we have no treatment for this. But that is just a very misinformed statement, and this is why. It's only novel in the same way as a new influenza is novel. Coronaviruses have been around for decades, and the human immune response uses your B cells and T cells. It develops antigens, and you produce immunity. So now in major cases, you don't roll the dice. But in everyday interaction, I've never once had a flu shot. I've gotten the flu, and I've gotten better. Imagine if I wanted to destroy the nation because influenza exists. There has to be, what is the threat of COVID, right? Don't we need to properly analyze the threat before we take action?
Sure, and I think that's data we will have, a couple months from now. I don't think we have that right now, and I'm sure people would argue with me, but I don't think we know the full impact right now. There's an economic impact.
If the data showed that it was let's just go with a really safe number, well below 0.5% of case mortality rate, you would instantly think that we have to quickly look at the full scope of the damages we're doing and put it in the proper perspective, because the threat has to match our solution.
Sure. And I think the threat is not just the threat of people dying, it's the threat of our systems and our systems collapsing. So you have to look not only at health data, mortality rates, there's an economic impact, there's an education impact, sure. There is a housing market impact, there is,
So in the face of all those things, you realize we're not doing that. We're only taking still the side of safety. We're still taking the side of, hey, we need to just, especially here in Michigan, like other states, I'm not going to speak for them, but speaking of Michigan, we are only taking we're just going to blindly follow precaution and not look at the data like you are suggesting.
I would agree that the data that are informing the governor's decisions are medical data, not economic data. I will agree with you on that.
Okay, so that I got to address your treatment thing real quick, and then I think that should be a good next avenue. So like treatment, remember when we were little and you got sick and your grandmother would give you chicken noodle soup? There's something special to that. The viruses are very rarely treated. You give the immune system and the body what it needs so that your immune system can treat and cure the virus. This isn't new knowledge. Like this isn't like a bacterial infection where like a certain, medication is our solution. Viruses are radical RNA things without DNA that enter our body. And most viruses don't even try to kill the host. They try to replicate, and our body learns it, they fight it, and we produce immunity. With that being said, there are things that can help aid the body that some people say vitamin D, some people say hydroxychloroquine mixed with zinc, mixed with zithromycin, but regardless, all you're actually doing is allowing the body to have what it needs to produce immunity. So when we say these things about like treatment and vaccine, I am the treatment. As if I take care of my health and you take care of your health, you are the treatment to a virus. That is basic, college level understanding of how viruses interact with the immune system.
So here, on the flip side of that too, I don't disagree with what you're saying. On the flip side though, like I said, I don't have any proof, but I believe I had COVID. And
I actually believe I did too. I was in Asia for a week, and when I came back, I got sick for only a couple days, but I'm like pretty healthy. I got sick, and then my whole gym got sick. One of my gentlemen was
that happened to us too.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, my jujitsu spot. So
story that you told me.
Yeah. So my thing with that is this. I should not have been going to work for 2.5 months as sick as I was, coughing all over kids and with a fever. But I'm in a job where I can't take off work.
So now that's a whole nother debate though. Like I agree.
So, okay, but here you go. So when we're weighing cost analysis, right? Like
now we're not we're clearly on one side in Michigan, but I agree. If you have symptoms,
I would get fired if I took off too many days. Okay.
No, and I would support that. And that's a whole nother argument. I would say
we have teaching shortages and sub shortages. So when I don't go to work, my colleagues work on their plan time where they're supposed to be grading and making lessons. They go in my classroom and teach. So there's a whole dichotomy of things that occur in different sectors of the economy that
and believe me, I will be your number one supporter in tangents like that. We absolutely need to do better. We need to do better as a culture to take care of people that, in times like that. But those type of things can't be driving our response when the reality, the statements I'm making are factually true.
And I hear you, and I'm, again, not arguing with you. I think you're making valid points, but we also need to remember that our response is based on how our systems are set up. So if we don't have a healthcare system,
we need to fully re-engineer the systems is the idea.
Yeah, if you want to keep working while people have COVID, yeah, we need to have a healthcare system that can take care of the people that get sick and have jobs that would be back when people.
I support that.
So this is to me, this lockdown would not have happened in the way that it did happen if we had those safety nets in place previously.
So now, let's go to flattening the curve, because that's what that was about. Literally flattening the curve was, hey, we don't want our hospitals to be overrun, which, man, I got that. I was like, it makes sense. That's why we're going to be, okay, cool. Well, then right after the curve, after our hospitals were not overrun, because there's an extremely small area. Everyone kept saying it's going to happen, but I was staying in touch with all my doctor friends in Wayne, in St. Joe's, in Beaumont. I'm calling them daily. Hey, has it happened yet? Where's the, no. During the midst of the pandemic, Beaumont, Wayne. So out of in Michigan, there was 3 counties that made up 88% of the cases. The main COVID hospital, Beaumont, Wayne, was closed. They shut down. But hospitals are laying off thousands of people. So the moment we bought into flattening the curve, because I can agree with what you're saying, well, then once the hospitals weren't overrun, why are healthy adults and children not out getting fresh air, being in the sunshine, not being, sitting at home with anxiety? Explain that to me. I don't understand. We just left flattening the curve once hospitals weren't overrun.
I think the defense that someone who supports quarantining, so I would say like Dr. Khaldun and Governor Whitmer, would say that if you open up too quickly, the flattened curve doesn't matter because of the way the virus spreads and because of its gestation of several weeks before it can become symptomatic. So like I said, I get that, right? Like why, okay, hospitals aren't overrun. Can we get back to normal now? Based on the way that this virus operates, in my opinion, no, we can't get back to normal. But
because you think it is not widespread, right? You're saying that we've contained it. You're saying that our lockdown has done something, right?
Yes. I think that if we did not do this, we would be seeing a lot more cases and a lot more deaths from the virus. But again, now we need to look at what was the economic impact versus, I guess if you want to look at it that way, what's the economic impact versus human life, right? Like
No. You can't even say that, because what about suicides that have gone on? What about people that have been let out of jail to re-murder? What about violent sexual offenders being let? There's human life and human life. I mean, the suicide life is just as important as a COVID life, right? What about people for elective surgeries that can't get them right now that are dying because they can't get in the hospital? Those lives matter
well,
too.
I would say if your surgery is elective, then you're not going to die.
Well, I mean, like they consider some heart procedures elective. That technically is the classification. So that, I mean, I'm talking about examples of like suicide is a massive thing, right? I mean, think about depression. Think about the anxiety that this culture suffers with, probably because of the way that a lot of us operate. And it is sad. And there is more change, but there's life on both sides.
Our health system in this country is terrible, especially for mental health. So again, like I said, there are far more like concerning issues that this brings to light on a massive scale that people need to be talking about. Like, why is it that the middle class and the working poor are the ones that are paying for this situation? It's not the Koch brothers. It's not Betsy DeVos. It's not.
No, of course. Come on.
Okay.
No,
like they're fine, right? They don't care. But they'll advocate against universal health care. They'll advocate against public education. They'll advocate against mental health services for free. So all the people who are advocating,
and I am up for that battle. I am up for those.
I'm of the mind that this situation has occurred the way it has occurred because those people have had the power to shape those systems that are not prepared for something like this, and they don't care.
So I have a good 2-part thing in response to that. So let's use. So you're saying the lockdowns are saving lives and the virus is not widespread. So I'm gonna bring up 2 things for that. So let's look at it this way. The state of Michigan has just about 10 million people in it, right? Last time I checked, I think the population is right about 10 million. Is that right?
Sounds about right, yeah.
Okay. Country of Sweden is about 10 million. Country of Sweden did not implement lockdown. They've allowed, the people to be at the malls, bars, do whatever you want. It's kind of a wild, radical approach. Everybody said their deaths were going to spike way higher, but they would reach herd immunity quicker, right? Herd immunity is the miracle that once enough people have antibodies, the virus dies out, right? So the entire country of Sweden has less deaths than the state of Michigan, which implemented the strictest lockdown procedure. We were trying to do everything we could. They did nothing. We did everything we did. Explain that to me.
So I feel like you're comparing apples to oranges, right? Because
Sweden it's people, but I'm interested how you'll say that.
Sweden has universal health care.
So you think, but we have no treatment and no medicine, no vaccine. So
Sweden has employment protections for people who are sick and can't go to work. So in the United States, it's considered poor work ethic if you're sick and you stay home, right? Some people don't even have sick time. So if you have a culture where if you walk in somewhere sick and people are like, oh, you need to go home, and then you still get paid, well, yeah, the virus isn't going to spread.
That seems like a different issue. So how did they survive in Sweden, though? So how did they survive? Because they just let the virus widespread. You said there's no treatments, there's no vaccine. So how?
Because they have different social constructs than we do. That's my point. This isn't about lockdown. This is about the social constructs of where you are. That's why I'm saying the systems need to change if we don't want to have to do this
But
again.
they let the virus spread through their entire country, all over the place, but it just didn't kill as many over there. While we locked down and we played it safe, we avoided people, we social distance, we did all these things, it killed less of them because of their social constructs.
Yes.
I don't understand that at all, but so they published they're about to hit herd immunity, which would be millions and millions of people infected. They still have less deaths than the state of Michigan. I'm going to look into your statement further on how the social constructs could have been the answer to that. But let's go to a second part of that then. So antibody testing.
Okay.
I don't know how closely you followed it. Stanford University, University of Southern California, 2 places in Boston. New York produced them, several places. They've also done blanket testing on military, on prison populations, on homeless. So I'm going to talk about those for a little bit. So these antibody testing, even at the lowest level, and if you wanted to say, well, there's also a slight variance in accuracy, even if you took the smallest amount of reported antibody, showing that COVID had already been in these people, even if you took the smallest amount and then you cut a number out of whatever you feel the percentage of error is, and you go with the absolute lowest, it would show that millions more of Americans have already had COVID, like probably what you and I were talking about, right? So then that would already take the things like mortality rate and death statistics and drive them even lower, right? Is that, you would agree that's true? It's been more widespread than we know. Antibody testing shows millions and millions have already had this. So it is not as dangerous as we thought, but you still think it's dangerous enough that we need to keep the lockdown that has caused more deaths than the social construct of Sweden, right? So explain to me the antibody testing. It shows it's all over. Millions of people have had it. I'm going to go over a couple other studies with you real quick, and then we'll move to another point.
So I think it's false to say that Sweden hasn't done any locking down, because they have.
No. I don't want to say any. They said, hey, groups of over 50 type shouldn't be done. They've done, but they also implemented it really late into their thing. If you look at the dates they implemented things, even every expert said it takes a certain amount of time for social distancing and stuff to take an effect and da. So even if you try to hammer the point like, well, they did a tiny bit, Michigan should be drastically different. We went into like hide in your homes and do not like hug your family members through shower curtains. We went to the extreme, Jen.
Like I said, I don't disagree with you. I think antibody testing on a national level could definitely help ease the path to restrictions, so we could say. But we don't have those tests either. So,
but we literally do. Stanford published their results. University of Southern California published their results. New York published their results. Massachusetts, for example, took the homeless, because you brought that up in the beginning. Homeless people are literally living on the streets in this country, and we need to do better for that. They took 400 homeless people, blanket tested them, and said, oh my God, like COVID is going to wreck these people. They don't have health care. They're not in good condition. 1/3 of them tested positive with no symptoms. 1/3.
So I would say this too. We don't know how the virus is going to change, and we don't know.
Yeah, but you're playing on fear and unknown, and I'm talking about data. We can't make decisions for the country if there is data. We have to go by data. Do you remember the initial mortality rate statistics? They told us 3 to 10% mortality rate. You remember those when it was all over the news? 3.4 to 10% mortality rate. Do you believe that is anything more than a science fiction story at this point?
I don't know if it would have been 3 to 10%, but I do know it would have been a lot higher than it is now if we didn't do what we did.
No. Mortality rate is like the chance that a virus is killing. That wouldn't change. We're talking about like the truth around the case fatality. I'm not talking about the number of deaths. I'm talking about the mortality rate of the virus.
Yeah, like I said, I have a hard time believing any expert's predictions on anything, quite frankly. So do I think that was accurate? Probably not.
But all of our decisions initially were made upon the response to that prediction and to those things. So if we were horrifically far off in how dangerous this virus is, shouldn't our response then theoretically be horrifically far off from what we should actually be doing? If I told you you had a 10% chance of dying from something, we would respond one way. And then what if you were a 0.2%? We would respond completely different, not even close to the same way, right?
I don't know, because that's not what we did.
But we have the data now. So I'm going to give you a quick example. The 2017 flu in this country, it hospitalized 959,000 people. You can find that on the CDC website. 959,000. Over 61,000 died, Jen. That is over a 6% mortality rate. If I told you the 2017 flu had a 6% mortality rate, that would mean hide in your home. This is horrible. 6%. But what do we do with all things like mortality rate? We take asymptomatic cases, mild cases, moderate cases, non-hospitalizations, the past knowledge of influenza, and we factor that to create proper statistics. We say, well, we guesstimate that really the flu actually infected about 30 million and only that many died. So that gives us perspective. When we derived mortality rate, I went and said, okay, how did we come up with these numbers? They literally just took hospitalizations versus deaths and then presented those numbers to the public as if that is worth anything. And then that drove our action. That is not, no experts do this. That's not intelligent. That's fear monger. Or even if you say, okay, we were just trying to be cautious, then the second the data is available, we should have been, forget partisan, forget red, forget blue, we should have been like, what is this actually going to do? Right? Because otherwise we're just speculating.
True. But I also believe that we're not going to have that answer tomorrow. Like we're going to have to look at this to
but the
have
data
that
is
answer.
like rapidly coming out and people are just not wanting to acknowledge it. It's, I mean, that study, there's multiple, I only listed a couple for you. There are tons of people, and they're not political people. They're scientists in labs saying, hey, we're looking at the blood work. We are showing you the results here. They're right here. Look at these results. And we're just continuing. Whitmer is continuing to perpetuate ideologies based off the initial fears, which I understand trying to protect people. I don't understand ignoring data and science that is in front of you.
So, and I can say this to you as well. Where I live in the district that I represent as a commissioner has Michigan State University's Kellogg Center. And every scientist that works there contacted me in March before we went into lockdown and said, I sincerely hope that you advocate for lockdown, and sent me data.
Yeah, but that's the initial caution. I love that. The initial caution. I get that.
But here's the deal. If you believe that data and the way that they were looking at
it. What data are you referring to? Because we didn't have any data initially before like what data?
Those scientists had data for what was going on around the world.
Yeah, but that again, that's the one I told you that was corrupt. I told you that's hospitalizations versus deaths, and we would never do that in history. That's not how you report on things. You wouldn't say, hey, cancer has a 70% chance of killing you if cancer kills 70% of the people that get it. You would take cancer and say, what are the odds that you get cancer? What are the chances? You know, you would factor everything. Like I said, it was just as bad as the flu. If I said the upcoming flu has over a 5% chance to kill you, that is so unbelievably inaccurate. Even though I could say, well, time out for a second. I looked at, there was this many people, there was 959,000 people in the hospital and 61,000 died. That's so unintelligent. And I'm not a scientist, but that you don't take the cases that go to the hospital and then create the threat of the virus. You have to take all cases. If you can't accurately do them, you have to use antibody testing, and you have to use blanket testing, and you have to do extrapolated data estimates with antibodies.
When this all started, we didn't have the tests, so that's part of the problem.
Okay, I can appreciate
we looked at data from what was going on in other places because we weren't prepared for this. And again, this is why I say systems are important. There was what would you want to call a task force created under President Obama's tenure to combat pandemics such as this. And
but we weren't. So where did we go wrong?
When Trump came into office, he disbanded the task force, and
the task force wasn't like supplies and stuff. It was just people.
No.
And then he got rid of the people.
How to respond, and part of that response was having testing for things like this.
So he just said, get rid of all that stuff.
Well, he ended a lot of things that Obama did because Obama did it, right? So this is where I say,
I mean, I can't.
This is where I say politics, right, and systems and people with money and power play a role in how this pandemic and response came out. Maybe if that group of people was working and fully funded, we would have had a better response to what's going on now. And we would have had better data to say, like, this is what we should have done. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't know who's right. And like I said, we're not going to know really fully until we can take a look at the data that exists from every sector of what this has affected, not just deaths, not just hospitalizations, not just health, like
Sure, suicide, people that lost their careers, poverty kills people, the
everything,
amount of people,
unemployment, right, economic impact, like all of this needs to be looked at before I can say.
Do you think they're doing that in real time? Do you think they're considering everything right now? Or are they mainly just still operating off of the fear of the virus right now? Or do you have people, like, do you think Whitmer right now is looking at every factor? She's looking at the amount of people unemployed. She's looking at suicides. She's looking at domestic abuse that's through the roof. She's looked at that they're letting out violent and sexual offenders. She's looking at all this and trying to make decisions, or is she still making decisions based on the virus?
I'm not certain Michigan has released any offenders, so I just want to throw that out there. But I do believe that she is basing her decisions right now on COVID data. I am not confident that she's looking at necessarily all the other
Everything,
factors.
like all the cards on the table.
And that's just my impression. Like, I'm not talking to Governor Whitmer every day, so I don't know.
No, I understand, yeah.
But that's my impression based on her press conferences and the data that she displays at those press conferences. But that's not to say that, like, the electeds that are on these commissions for economic development and all that.
So really, we don't know what information she is being given, so it's hard to speculate.
We don't.
So I guess I would look at it like this. So coronaviruses have been around for decades. You know that. I mean, we've had the SARS outbreak. Coronavirus has been around, I think, the 60s when they identified them. They used to just lump them into flu-like symptoms, right? So knowing that coronaviruses have been around for decades, and we have a really large understanding of coronaviruses from their previous state, wouldn't we take into account that we know that there's often like a ton of asymptomatic people, a ton of mild people, a ton of moderate people? So when you get these like wild statistics, like if I'm a guy with a computer that can figure that out, like, wouldn't you think every expert should have known that, like, let's play it safe, but like, let's make sure we apply our past knowledge? Like, should that be, don't you take precedent to learn? Like, if you were in an abusive relationship and you start seeing signs in the future, you might go like, hey, this might be kind of a warning. Like, there's precedent there. We have decades that say, hey, basic flu-like symptoms, it's a virus, take care of yourself, you have symptoms, stay home. Like you said, we need to improve those systems, but like, we have that understanding. Should we not have done that?
I think we didn't have the infrastructure to support a different
It's more
response.
to the infrastructure. Okay, so now I got a couple questions about the data. Let's just create perspective. So I checked this morning before we came in the interview just to make sure. So February 1st to May 1st, right? Because the pandemic really didn't start into February, you know, where people started dying, all these things. Actually, do you have a computer in front of you? I'm going to have you pull it up so you can look at the same numbers with me.
Yep.
Type in CDC provisional death count COVID-19. That's even better. I wish I had my laptop. I got to get a studio set up like you. So that'll be the current data as reported to the CDC using the death count certificates, right? So scroll down there. Tell me what all-cause death has been from February 1st until the current data that you see reported, and then tell me what the COVID number is. So we're working with the same data here.
So if you're looking at just COVID deaths, that's 2,311. But I will
wait. No, not even Michigan. Just go all the way up to the United States. Let's, because the threat to our nation. Just scroll right up at the very, very top. It should show us because we can break down all-cause death. We can create some perspective. So scroll up should be the first chart that's in front of you. There should be like COVID. I think it was somewhere around 60 something, and then there'll be like all cause. It might show like pneumonia, so for comparison basis and things like that.
So if you want death from all causes,
yeah, how many people died from February 1st until us speaking right now in this country?
Oh, they want me to add this together?
No, it's already listed. All cause death means all causes of death.
So looks like, if I'm looking at the column correctly, for that 857,000 roughly.
Yep, there you go. Because just under 2.8 million Americans die every year. So in the time that COVID from February 1st because that's not all cause death from January. I mean, that's only the COVID window. So let's put perspective. In the same time frame, over 800,000 people have died in this country. Many things from lifestyle choices, many things from influenza, infections. Hospital-acquired infections kill almost 100,000 people a year. You know that. So there's a million things that plague this society, right? Alcohol. I don't even want to know the amount of deaths that come from that. Bad lifestyle choices, heart disease, slaughters people, right? COVID is a small fraction of that. And when you start to create perspective, I don't even think COVID is around the pneumonia death. I mean, pneumonia has been around since we were born. But did you see pneumonia on there? Was it above or below COVID?
Well, it depends, because there's COVID contributed pneumonia and then there's just pneumonia.
Yeah, just look at the category that's right next to all cause death. There should be like pneumonia, and it's not flagged with the COVID, which is U07-1. That wouldn't be in there. It would just be the pneumonias, which is, I believe, J12 through 18 or something like that.
Yeah, that's 81,000.
So 81,000 people. Okay, so when we start to create perspective, we have 60,000 people die from COVID. We have over 800,000 die. A number absolutely dwarfs COVID. But yet the major threat to this society that we should restructure everything for is not the fact that 800,000 people are dying in the same time period. You're telling me it's the 60,000 of COVID that now we have to put 45 million on unemployment. We have to destroy millions of small businesses. We have to put people into poverty. We have to separate wealth from the billion. I mean, billionaires are killing it. You read some articles, they're killing it. Like Amazon and stuff, he's about to hit it. Jeff Bezos could be the first trillionaire, right? But people like you and I are going to get slaughtered. Hospitals are laying off thousands of people. When you start to create perspective, it doesn't seem to me like COVID is really, I'd rather break down that 800,000 number, Jen, and see.
I don't disagree with you. Like, people are dying from poverty every day, and we've cared zero about that. And, we're addressing this. Why they picked this to address and not everything else in the country that's terrible? No, you're right. It's idiotic. And
could you pull up that chart one more time? I'm going to look at one other thing just so I don't get this wrong.
Which number do you
got that 60,000 number with COVID?
Yes.
Does it have a bracket with a little 1 above it?
The number itself doesn't. No,
like in the reporting where it says U07-1, is it bracketed with a little 1?
Yes.
Well, that means something on a medical chart. You always have to then scroll down to see what they did to the number. So maybe scroll down and look at, what is that 1? Can you read that for me?
Yeah, let me see. Data is incomplete because of lag time in between deaths.
No, right below the chart, there should have been a number 1 because it directly corresponds to the chart above it.
Here's the numbers. All right. Deaths with confirmed or presumed COVID-19.
Perfect. So what that actually means is that 60,000 number doesn't need lab work, doesn't need confirmation, doesn't need a test, needs nothing. It can literally just be a suspicion. You could just throw it on anything. So even that 60,000 number, some is going to come out of that. And let's say it's a small amount. Let's start talking about another issue in the way that we report a COVID death. We wouldn't report someone that died as a car accident if they had a positive COVID test as a COVID death, right? It would have to be like.
Well, I would hope not.
Okay, so on television for ABC, the Illinois public health director got on TV. She was grilled by a reporter and said, explain to me exactly what makes a COVID death. And she says, we are recording anyone at the time of death with a positive test as a COVID death. And then she said, I want to reiterate, even if clearly from alternative sources, if you test positive at the time of death, it will be a COVID death. I hope that helps. I refuse to believe that. I said, there is no way in this nation we would make decisions if we would manipulate data like that, right? Like you wouldn't.
Oh, people are scandalous as hell. They manipulate data all the time.
So I'm like, no, I won't accept it. So, oh God, I can't say who it is, but someone that you know very, very well on this team that's been a super successful fighter over the years. You know her, but don't say person's name out loud. Her, you know her. You know who it is. Family member at Sparrow Hospital, has worked there forever, reached out to me because I started speaking out and said, listen, if I come forward, I will lose my job. I can't speak out, but we had 2 people die in a car accident, which is why I just used that example on you a second ago before. I had people die. They came in the hospital. We tested them. They came back positive. We put in the count. So now take the fact that the Illinois public health director on television said that. And then I interviewed an ICU nurse out of Detroit. And about halfway through the interview, I said, you know what? I'm going to ask her. And I said, it would obviously be criminal if this nation was making decisions based off a number that was unbelievably inflated so that people like you and other people fighting this battle for us were using data that they didn't even know how unbelievably it had been altered. I'm like, tell me exactly, if I died in a car accident in your hospital and I tested positive for COVID, what would count? And I have it on my YouTube. Her eyes light up and she goes, we're being instructed to do it that way. It's not that we think that that's right, but we're being told to report the data that way. Jen. So then I said, no, I still won't accept it. So I pulled up statistics for heart disease, cancer, COPD, stroke in Michigan in April. They took the largest drop they have in years, not even close. So now take out heart disease is incredibly consistent. COPD is incredibly consistent. These things plague our people. Long lifestyle choices destroy this culture. So now when you know, imagine if we said anyone at the time of death that has influenza in their body's going to be an influenza death. Or how about anyone at the time of death that has food in their digestion is going to be a food poisoning death. You cannot manipulate data like that when driving the actions of a country, right?
Well, I agree with that. As someone who has been researching for many years and is about to have my dissertation hopefully approved, yeah, I agree with that. Manipulating data is not it's not good. It's not moral. It's a corrupt thing to do. Do I believe that people in power manipulate data for their own benefit? For sure. Yeah, I do.
So 100%. now, Jen, what if that number is 30,000? What if the real number of COVID deaths where it was a contributing factor was 25,000? At what point do we go, we have slipped into madness, and this is not about people and health. This is about power. This is about money. There's about something. I don't even want to speculate what it's about, but I can tell you what, listen, nobody gave a shit when I've seen people depressed all these years and suicide rates through the roof and an opioid epidemic and people. And now all of a sudden, now we care about people so much that this is why we have to lock down and stay at home. Jen, explain that to me.
I can't. And if you look at my Facebook post, maybe like yesterday or the day before, I asked that very question. Like, it's not, we shouldn't be asking like if the pandemic response was the correct response. We should be asking why it's hitting people like working class people, like the working poor, like middle class people, and rich people are fine.
But you know what? Who's getting destroyed by all these lockdowns and all these small businesses being closed? Is it the rich people, Jen?
No, that's my point. But who's making decisions?
So that's where I'm so glad we are getting to the same. I am literally entrusting you with you have to be the ones combating that. I can't be the one holding the data that I have. I'm useless. I'm a jujitsu coach. But you are literally a powerful person in this society that could get into an office that could literally change our future for the better. And the data is there. You might have to invest the time. You might have to study. Like the amount of CDC website and data reporting I've looked through, I never for the rest of my life want to look at death numbers again.
For sure.
It's horrific. But why do you think Gretchen is unaware of this? Do you think our leaders are unaware of these things?
No, I don't.
So then when I compiled enough information, I don't know if you saw the video that I put out of the public stance that I took when I stood in defiance. So on April 14th, I had already compiled enough information. I spoke to all my doctor friends. I started reaching out to nurses. And I had already had everything we've discussed at this point. I'm looking at this and going, there's something wrong here, okay? And if I'm going to lose my life's work, I wanted it to be because I was saving tons and tons of lives and I was doing the right thing. So as of May 1st, I put out a public video and I opened my building. I've been operating. Given everything on the table, what action should come against me? What should I be doing at this point? You being a person in politics, I am openly defying it, but I'm not openly defying it like I hate our government. I think the Democratic Party is this or the Republican Party is that. I'm not political at all. I'm saying I have spent 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is now, taking every single bit of data to create proper perspective. I looked at subject matter and the way that we always report on infectious disease. I created a full picture and I had to make it a very difficult choice while still telling people, listen, if you want to shelter in place, do that. If you would like to wear a mask, please do that. If you want to, sanitize your hands every 15 minutes, please do that. If you don't want to come into this business, it's it's your choice, but I'm not going to lose my entire life's work when we've already spoken about enough to show that at least the story that's being presented is very far from the reality for whatever reason.
I think that the story that we're presented is always very far from reality.
It's good to hear that from somebody that's going to be front lines of the fight, because sometimes I don't know. I literally sometimes sit back and think, do you guys not know?
No, they know. Make no mistake, there's always a political gain to be made on every decision that a politician makes. That's, and I'm not a career politician, which is why I can say that to you, because, you know,
Is
hey,
that going to happen to you though? Is that going to happen to you when you get in there, when you get voted in?
no,
I'm gonna support you.
I'll never get high enough because I say things like that. Please understand, I don't play the political machine, right? So and like I said, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. The rational side of me says in a couple months, we will have everything we need to decide whether or not this was necessary and whether or not it will happen again.
But we've already done all the damage at that point. We're not as
Yeah.
we go trying to do our best. We're literally just, we took our stance in the beginning. We put our foot down and we said, we're doing this and we'll look back later. Does that?
But like you said too, you have to do what you think's right. So, you know, the people that we've elected, whether you elected them or not, they got elected, are given the responsibility and the authority to make those decisions for us. That's where our country operates. That's where our government operates. Do they think they're making the right decision now? Yeah. May they change their opinion on that later? Maybe. I hope they reflect. But like you said, you know, you've decided it's not worth losing your life's work. Do I think that's a wrong decision? No, I don't know what's going to be the right decision. I can't honestly say what's going to be the right decision right this second, because I need to see, you know, how this works out and what's going to happen, you know, come the fall when the likelihood of a spike is going to be there.
Time out. It's just flu season. Happens every year. I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah,
gonna
I
happen.
know.
Coronavirus is going to be a part of it. They've always been a part of it. So is influenza. Like, you know, influenza numbers are like they were predicted to be 40 to 60,000 this year. And I was looking at the chart. It was well, I think on that same chart you just saw like 8,000. Maybe I wonder if those are some being coded in incorrect direction. Because if you're coding car accidents,
they could be.
So with everything we've discussed, there's obviously a very big detach from action versus reality, because you create perspective. These things, even just if you accept the lowest level antibody testing, you accept the people telling you to your face on television, hey, if you die with COVID in these places, you're going to be a COVID death. When you create perspective, this thing's threat is unbelievably low.
And that like I said, you know, you have statistics and you have put those statistics out there and you've cited them. And I would probably guess that the people making these decisions are going to cite their own statistics, and we're going to have to.
The funny thing though is nobody has challenged me on the information, which is like, imagine if I sat down as a person who is a leader, I did a 20-minute rant saying the virus is a hoax, the government hates us, they want your blah, blah, blah. I would have got massacred, or no one would have listened to me. So this is an issue for you as a politician that I'm really interested in. So my video on YouTube started blowing up, is 5-figure numbers. All of a sudden, a doctor with just under 1 million subscribers told his people, go watch this video. My phone starts going nuts. The numbers like 12,000, 13,000, 14,000. I'm like, what the heck is going on? What, right? Very short. Within a 12-hour period, YouTube takes my video off the internet. So porn can be on the internet. Conspiracy theories that say George Bush took down the World Trade Centers can be on the internet. All kind of Ku Klux Klan ideology can be on the internet. People that are against gay people can be on the internet. These horrible things that need to not be out there. But me sitting down using cited data from CDC, from firsthand witness accounts from doctors, explaining why I made a decision, was taken off the internet. When in this country, I study our amendments very closely. I follow the Constitution. The First Amendment was first for a reason. Back in the day, they knew how vital the ability to have dialogue is, right? And they would never have foreseen a future where corporations own the way that people can communicate.
Well,
If
there it is.
corporations operate in a country that has a set of laws, why are they not subject to those laws? And you can say, well, it's in their community guidelines. Their community guidelines can trump the United States Constitution and my ability to tell information to you. How does that work, Jen?
Well, navigating free speech on the internet is something that people who have law degrees are doing and have been doing since the inception of the internet. I don't disagree with you, but that's where we have to say, right? Is it really free speech if YouTube owns it? You know, do I think it's right they took it down? Do I think they have some stuff on there that shouldn't be on there? And why are they picking and choosing? Again, power, I don't know. Who's telling them to pick and choose? Someone. And why are they telling them to pick and choose? I don't know, right?
Did you find my video threatening when I just went over information?
I didn't watch it.
Oh, you didn't watch it. You got to watch it.
And
it was our discussion right here. And I actually didn't even go as deep because I started telling people, please Google CDC provisional death counts. Please look at these numbers. Please speak to these. I only went over, this is what we know so far. I didn't say it was because of people or this or that and the other thing. I painted an objective informational video based on how I made such a tough decision so that my community could judge me more fairly. A doctor and many other people, because it was starting to go viral, hundreds and hundreds of shares, and it gets taken down. We live in a very strange time.
That's insane. But I would philosophically argue you could walk outside of your house and yell your message and no one would tell you to stop. So, you know what I'm saying?
Like in the street, Jen, I got a sign around my neck that says, I can give you the answers.
That's where again, like, this is another system that we need to talk about. And, you know, the internet is a system, and the legality of the internet is a system, and how we operate as people that live in a country that have the First Amendment is a system. So, yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think it's stupid. I don't think they should have taken it down. But again, like, they're a corporation, they can do what they want, right? So there's
but as a corporation should have to abide by the governing laws of this nation.
They have their power of freedom of speech too, right? So if they don't
like
at what
point can the corporation just own the country?
It's their platform.
Buy the country, make your own laws.
I would argue.
I'm taking the same ideology.
I would argue that corporations do make your laws. Lobbyists buy lawmakers all the time. So,
and that's another problem.
It is a problem.
Again, so if we know all these problems are across the board, but then you are enforcing this thing that is destroying millions of lives, I almost feel that, like, you know what? If you're going to try to enforce that, I was raised with the American spirit that I'm supposed to defy unjust laws. I'm supposed to question authority to make sure that it matches with evidence. If someone gave me an order that Jen, for whatever reason, is an enemy of the state, you have to go shoot her, I would never follow that order. I wouldn't follow an unjust law, no matter how it was written down. Things like the Holocaust happened under someone issuing orders, right? So people are supposed to challenge things based on rationality and logic. When I did that, I was silenced.
Did you, just out of curiosity, did you get a fine for defying the executive order?
No, shockingly. So here's where the story gets really interesting, because you see they've crucified that poor barber out in Owasso. They're all over him. So I put out a public video, because you know what? I didn't want to take the route of hiding this. Right. I didn't want to be someone sneaking people. So I put out a public video, said I was opening it. I put a chair out front of my academy and sat out for 6.5 hours on the day that the police were supposed to show up. Not a single police officer has ever come by. I directly called, I called back the public health director for my county, explained all the rationale, all the reason. I said, listen to me, if you can debunk anything that I'm saying, if you can show me that I have bad perspective or anything is wrong, I will absolutely change my stance. I'm not someone that clings to my ideology and thinks that I'm always right. In face of new evidence, I reconsider my opinions. And they stood down. The local sheriff backed me. Mike Murphy said, hey, given all this, looking at the executive order, he backed me being able to operate. The local prosecuting attorney, William Valancourt, did not take action. Channel 7 came out, Channel 4 came out, Detroit Free Press, Ann Arbor News, MLive. I mean, it's everybody. Those people, even 2 of the reporters, called the state attorney general, Dana Nessel, to report me, and still no action. But yet they're crushing the barber. I watched a news report where they told me, hey, we want you to debate with either one of our experts or one of our reporters. And I said, I will, as long as I can record every bit of the conversation so that if you were to splice it, it could be an objective point of view. So now here's the strange part. The moment I did that, I have been just as vocal as I have with you right now. They've completely left me alone. But I watched the news report. They had a guy out front of the barbershop with a sign around his neck saying how corrupt the government is and how crazy Whitmer is and all these things. But they didn't put any of the questions that I was asking about how deaths are being reported or about any of the thing around this event, which would lead rational people like you and I to try to make more informed decisions. Why have they not taken action against me, but they're crushing other people?
So what formal action have they taken against the barber?
So they filed to have his license removed. They asked to have a Shiawassee County judge strip him. They served him cease and desist papers. They issued him citations from police.
So,
they sent state police to, yeah, you get it.
I think, and please don't take this as I think what they're doing is right. That's not what I'm saying. I think because he is licensed by the state, they may be going harder at him because the government issues his permit so that he can do his job.
Versus
So,
I've acquired my martial arts over years and people follow me because of my training.
So, and there's another thing at play there too. Because he is technically an employee of the state, really, I mean, because they certify him to do what he does, and because he has to comply with all these health department, whatever, blah, 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 they'll send the state police there, right? But your county is the one enforcing your executive order because you're not licensed by the state, right? So if your sheriff has said, we're going to stand down on this executive order, then no one's going to come after you unless the state somehow finds some way to come after you, which they're probably not going to do that because then it's like, why are you spending money to attack people who are just trying to make money? There's a whole political thing to that too. But I would venture to say they have easier access to attack somebody who is certified by the state than they would someone who is just a private citizen that owns a business.
So now that you are a martial artist, so this is going to give you a very good perception of this. How do you social distance in jiu-jitsu?
You don't.
How about wrestling?
Yeah, you don't.
How do they exist? How do you do them?
You're just going to have to do it.
So, it's a real question because you have people that are putting plexiglass in between them and their customers, and they're putting shower curtains up in restaurants. I am literally holding people down against their will, sweating on them, breathing on them.
So I think like for where I do jiu-jitsu, we don't have more than 20 or 30 people show up to a class on any given day. So like to me, that is sort of like this social distancing protocol anyway when they open stuff back up because they're saying mass gatherings, right? Don't have mass gatherings. So I'm going to have the same 20 or 30 people at practice with me every time I go to practice. Like we're not a club that gets like, an insane amount of people influx coming in. Now, if you have a bigger facility with more classes going on, so there's another spot in Kalamazoo, AZO. They do like Muay Thai, they do jiu-jitsu, they have cat strength and conditioning.
Yeah, like more like
huge,
my program.
Right? Like there's going to be 100 people in there at any given time, if not more. Well, that gets harder for social distancing. So, these are things we're going to have to contend with as mixed martial artists and as people that own businesses, that support these activities. Because it's hard, let's face it, it's hard to be a gym owner and, make money. Most people don't make a lot of money off of it. They make enough money to pay their gym fees, their heat and air conditioning and, their rent or whatever, or their mortgage for their spot. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Am I going to stop doing jiu-jitsu? No. So if that's
I didn't even know you still train, but I'm actually really proud of you. That's cool.
If that's what you want me to say, no, I'm not going to stop doing jiu-jitsu. Am I going to compete again when they let us compete? Absolutely.
What I'm actually saying is, if what I've told you so far is true, it would actually make if everything that I pointed to with all the antibody testing, with all the the tests that we've done and just all the data, this thing could actually turn out to be equal to a seasonal flu level threat or below for young, healthy adults. You wouldn't social distance in that thing. We might do better as a population. We might put better hygiene things into place. We might wash our hands more. We might let high-risk people wear masks. But then again, a lot of those comorbidities, not that some aren't genetic, I don't want to misspeak, but a lot of them come from very bad lifestyle choices over a sustained period of time. We might have to re-educate our people for how to be healthier, how to get away from bad practices. But you wouldn't just say, hey, social distancing came from because this is a major threat. Jen, if this is not a major threat, you don't restructure the way that human beings listen. Like, you should be able to hug your loved ones. You should be able to hug your friends. You should be able to go. So social distancing, I am not going to change anything unless you can tell me the virus is the threat that you originally told me, or at least a severe enough threat that it warrants that type of motion. Now, am I asking people to take care of their hygiene? Of course, but we should have been doing that all along. Am I going to tell people they can wear masks? Sure. But social distancing has gotten to people's head because they're very afraid.
Well, and I think too, you just brought up a bigger point about health and healthy lifestyles. Again, this country needs to address the fact that we don't do things for wellness, we do things for treatment. So like we need to rethink, right, how we
You got my vote.
Right. Okay. So we need to rethink how we look at health and access to health and affordability and availability, and how we teach people what, are good lifestyle choices. And, and this is not going to be popular amongst conservatives, but, we need to look at our welfare system too. Like how are we encouraging people to use food stamps and the money and assistance that they get? Because I can tell you that a lot of the kids that I teach that do have assistance are not eating well. There are food deserts. So there's, it's hard to access fresh food in certain areas. So you don't have a car. You can't get very far. You're going to your corner store that has, mac and cheese and ramen noodles, right? You're not getting, fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that. So there's a whole nother level of things that we should be talking about, again, based on the situation that we're seeing unfold now, that like our country should care to address just as much as they're caring to address this. 100%.
No, man, I agree so much. Like, there's so many things that this country could do better, but I feel like you just almost have to tackle the issue at hand first, and then we got to get back to work as people. We got to, like COVID right now is the hot topic, and then we have work to do. I agree so much, like with what you were just saying. There are so many things that we can do better as a nation. You know what I mean? And not even just need to do better as a nation.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it promoting someone taking care of their health would literally save more lives than what would ever die from COVID in the worst case scenario, period. Like just taking care of people's health. If we care about people, why do we push alcohol so heavily in the society? Why do we push so many things that slaughter people? Why? So if we want to play the idea that like, well, this is about your safety, well, then there's things that we could do without destroying the economy that would save so many more lives than COVID could ever kill. It's not even a close comparison.
1,000,000,000,000% agree with that. I do.
All right. Well, I feel like I'm going to eat up the rest of your day if I don't stop talking. But like, I honestly have enjoyed our conversation because
yeah, for sure,
the dialogue that needs to happen. We need to have people like you that are in positions of power. If you get elected, you can be a voice. You can try to move things in the right direction. You can be the one that says, hey, you may only have access to this data, but are we looking at the whole picture? Like we said, are all the cards on the table while we put millions of people out of work and while we lay off thousands of healthcare workers? And like, I mean, while let's not even list all the corruption. While all of it is what it is, are we making our best choices? Like, I didn't even know hospitals get paid per COVID diagnosis. They
get paid for every diagnosis.
I didn't realize that in a pandemic you would encourage. And so because one of the people that told me is, hey, the reason I was, that we thought it was okay is we can get more supplies and we can get more funding to help save lives if we put this down. But that corrupts things because now you're manipulating a number. How about we just give the hospitals what they need because you should take care of people?
There it is. How about that?
Every 100 people that get diagnosed as COVID is over $1 million to a hospital. That will motivate people to do things. But then if you're just Jen sitting down looking at a number saying this many people are dying and you didn't know that the death reporting was happening the way that we discussed, you didn't know that people were being incentivized to get money through this thing instead of just being given what they need, you would be so misguided.
Well, and that's another valid point, that had we had what we needed at the beginning of this, I can almost bet that this lockdown situation wouldn't be what it is. So there is that too. Like if we had been prepared to respond, we probably wouldn't have had to go as far as we've gone. So that's another issue that would take.
And you know what? The final thing to address before we get off here, the media in this country needs to get off of just, oh my God, can we get back to just reporting the information and allow people to formulate their own opinions?
It's
Like
insane.
you don't have to use suggestive thinking and controlled opposition and, you know, outrageous headlines. You can literally just report the truth and let people, you know, make decisions. If you show someone did something terrible, any good person should be able to say, that is terrible, I don't support it. You don't have to use brainwashing techniques to get people to just buy into your story.
Well, and again, the news media is a corporation, right? Every news source we have, with the exception of NPR that is donor funded, most news outlets are corporations, and they're owned by someone who owns a bunch of lobbyists, who buys a bunch of politicians who sit and make decisions for us.
It's cool to hear you say those words on video. Buys a lot of politics. You know what I mean? If we care about the steering this country in the right route, I would even support men. Give every politician that gets elected a $500,000 salary. That's fine, as long as you don't allow lobbyists to purchase them. I remember when we were fighters, if someone gave a $500 sponsorship, that fighter was like, this product is the greatest thing and I endorse it.
Meanwhile, it gives you kidney disease.
Exactly. So, whoa, what would a politician do for lobbying money? Okay. We need, you know, we need more critical thinkers and good human beings willing to get into politics and say, no, I'm not going to just take your buyout. I am going to stay into logical, rational conversations that can help people.
We'd have to reshape our campaign finance system for that to happen, but yep.
So you don't think it's even a possibility that, like, just through sources like a GoFundMe?
Not with the way that our finance system works for campaigning and the statistical analysis that people who have more money usually win, no matter what their message is. And that's due to like having lobbyist backing and corporation backing and super PAC funding. And so like in other countries that have similar elected systems to us, so like in Europe and in Canada, there's only a certain number of days that they get to fundraise per year. And our like the way that politicians operate in the United States, you're literally told that you should be fundraising 6 hours of every day. So 6 out of their 10 to 12 hours that they're supposed to be, you know, working for the people is spent buttering up people.
Man, the whole system is just so backwards, girl.
Yeah.
This is just, when you're a kid and you're innocent, and you looked at your country and you thought, I live in this beautiful place that really values morals and freedom. It is just so far from where we're at.
It is. It's terrible. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that have to change if things like this aren't ever going to happen again.
Okay, one final thing, because like I said, I'm not political. I did not vote for Trump. I want to be clear about that. I don't want someone to watch this video and be like, that terrible person, he must be. You're wrong. I literally did not, and I'm not. But with that being said, we have the Democratic candidate is Joe Biden, who I didn't know anything about, so I said, hey, I'm going to look into him because he's going to be. I don't really know if I have to say any words other than, like, I almost feel like if that was my grandfather, I'd be like, man, please come with me, grandpa. Just like have a seat. Let's relax. Like, what do you need me to get for you, man? And like the man's I'm sorry, but like things are slipping. And he literally has a woman that was like, on this date, I was sexually assaulted. I followed a police report. I have all these first-hand witness accounts. Not witness accounts. I have all these people that I told, I reached out to. I know exactly where it happened, what took place. We have that man running for the presidency of the United States of America, when most of the people that I do know that are against Trump look at him like he is the embodiment of the worst things in our culture combined. And yet that is what was present. It almost is an insult to any Democratic member that, like, hey, vote for this guy to get out of that guy. Give me your thoughts on this.
Well, okay, this probably
remember the Me Too movement? Remember the like Me Too, like believe all women? Remember Brett Kavanaugh got absolutely butchered?
Yeah, well, given that statement, it's very interesting to me that Donald Trump is where he is.
So of course he made some outlandish things, but like
So
Jen, you were in an MMA gym. Have you ever heard guys make any like not accurate, comments about women?
I mean,
Stop it. Yes, you have. You say it on camera right now. I know
yes.
what an MMA gym is like. I know
Well,
I know Jim Sparrow.
especially
Don't you dare.
people that are like in their 20s say stupid stuff because then you grow up a little bit and you're like, oh dang, I probably shouldn't have said that when I was 19. But
No, of course.
but so this is not going to be popular among your viewers, I'm sure, but like I say Joe Biden got that nomination because he's a rich white guy. Like he's got connections and power, and there you go. Again, reality of our political system. People with money and power win, and he is the status quo, white guy. So there it is.
I mean, I know Bernie Sanders is anti-establishment, so I know he's never going to win.
Yeah, but
But
he's also rich, and he's
but at
also
the end of the day, doesn't Bernie have like a much better chance of beating Donald Trump in the real? I mean, I've seen
honestly, no, he doesn't.
So, but do you believe that Joe Biden is the correct candidate to take the presidency of the United States?
Oh no, I don't think he or Trump are the correct candidates, but
You'll vote for Biden though over Trump? I got to hear that on camera.
1000% I will. Yeah, I can't handle Donald Trump. I can't do it.
So I'm not big into Donald Trump, but I do know like the last 3 years of this country was really good on like an economic level. I don't know much. I have it. That's what I said. I don't vote for. I didn't. But like, what about him? If you were telling me why I should vote for Joe Biden, who has a sexual assault on a woman currently being investigated and has had multiple women accuse him of this, his mental health is clearly slipping in the videos. I mean, clearly, and that don't take my word for it. Look it up. Tell me right now in a short answer why you could possibly put that man over the other guy. And I got to look into that. I'm doing it as soon as we get off the phone.
Did you not just describe Donald Trump to me?
I mean, I don't think he actually did. He got charged with sexual assault.
He didn't get charged, but he's had accusation after accusation thrown. Now, again, who gets charged in this country?
I get it. I understand lower class people. I get all that, but I'm saying like, so you think that Donald Trump has committed the same type of things like that against a woman?
Yes, I do. 1000%.
Is there proof of that? Because I'm gonna look that up as soon as we got. Because I can't. Yeah, I won't vote at all then.
Do I have proof? I'd have to look it up to say that I have proof. Is it how I just feel he is as a human being based on the things that come out of his mouth and the actions that he
I've
takes?
heard some of the things he said, and I'm like, oh my God. But like the last 3 years in the country, they weren't. I mean, the economy was very good. We did do a lot of great things. The last 3 years that have gone by, it was a good country. I loved when Obama was in office. It was a good country. Trump was a good country. So as a president, like as a human being, I guarantee you I would probably not be friends with him. I don't know. I've never met him. Maybe I would. Maybe I wouldn't. But what I'm saying is I doubt it. But what has happened in the last 3 years where you would say putting a guy that is Joe Biden in office is the right move? I was hoping.
In general, he'll support labor and education, which are two things that matter very much to me. So while the economy has been good for certain sectors, it's not good for public education at all.
So you would put a guy with that sexually assaulted a woman in there just if he'll back education and public sector
over a guy who most likely has done the same things and won't support education. So I mean, what choice do I have there?
How is this the United States of America, Jen?
I've been asking myself that for almost 4 years. I don't know.
Wow. Well, like I said, I appreciate your time very much today. Please keep in contact. Anything I can do to help, because I know beyond anything, beyond any political party, I know you're a good person. I've seen you from before. You are. You absolutely are. So with that being said, I appreciate you coming on and talking to me, and hopefully we turn this thing around, because
I hope so.
It's a mess. And please, everything that I spoke on, go back, watch this video, look into it as much as you can, because maybe you can be someone, like maybe the people that are calling shots truly don't have a full grasp on the information like they think they do. And when they broke it down further and they put it into proper perspective, maybe they might go, wait, you know what? Maybe we're being a little bit too extreme, and that's going to bite us. Because I've actually had a couple of friends that are longtime Democratic supporters. Like, because at this academy, I got both, and I love both. I got people on the right, I got people on the, I love them both. I mean, they're good people that are literally telling me, like, absolutely not. Like, I'm almost disgraced to be a Democrat because of what is taking place. And I'm afraid if this blows up, you just almost guarantee your enemy wins even more.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like, so we got to be rational.
I agree. I love being rational.
All right. Well, like I said, so much. Thank you so much, Jen.
It's been fun.
No, thank you. And anytime, if I can help you, I have, I try to be a man of my word. I try to be a good leader in my community. Everybody knows me around here. I work with, the local courts. I work with Reaching Higher program. I do so much with the community that if there's any way I can help or anything like that, please just reach out.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, girl. Well, you have a great day. I have no idea how much time I took up, but thank you.
Hour and a half. All right.
Oh my God, hour and a half. That's a good conversation. That's what we need, right? We need people talking about what matters.
All right. Bye.
All right. You have a great day. Bye.